early morning. Appreciate it, especially the representatives. Last week was our only week off, so we really appreciate them coming. Especially Representative Westman, who came on his birthday today.
And it's Senator to do.
So yeah, we're gonna get started. I'd like our board president, Greg Page, also the founder of Jenna's Promise, here to come up and get things started for us.
Thanks, Pat. Well, thanks to everybody for coming. Jenna's house is kind of like the flagship of Jenna's Promise, so we're sure happy to see everybody here and come enjoy the space. We have, do we want to sing there, Richie? Anybody got any singers?
No.
Job?
No, I get in trouble if I do that.
Yeah, you can shut up.
Happy birthday. How old are you, Richie? I mean, is it?
Don't worry. You just turned 60, so it can come around to you too.
So I guess what we try to do here is treat these folks with respect. We don't want to, they're donating their time coming here and going out of their way because they don't have to be here. So we want to keep this civil. We don't always agree with each other, but we can be respectful. And I think that's a lesson we should all take home with us, honestly, because politics are dividing friends, families, our communities. Let's stop, respect each other, and listen. And I'll let these guys go. And thanks for coming.
Thanks, Greg. For those who don't know me, I'm Patt, I'm the executive director at the Lamoille Economic Development Corporation, Lamoille Chamber of Commerce. We do have a few other folks here today, and hopefully I don't miss anybody, but I did want to acknowledge some of our board members that are here. Dodie Day of the Trombley Day Group is here. She's in the back there. Conrad Harris, he represents MSI and Sticks and stuff as well now, is here. Our former board president and member, Steve Clokey, who represents Smugglers Knots, is there in the middle of the crowd. Just wanted to acknowledge Steve. I hope I got everybody. Well, hopefully I didn't miss anyone. So the way we're gonna do this, I was gonna just have the reps go down and introduce themselves, and if you have anything specific that you wanna say that's really on your mind, right up front, you can let us know. And then from there, we'll kind of move about the audience here. Elisa in the black vest there has a mic, so she'll just kind of raise your hand and she'll get over to you. So if folks wouldn't mind, maybe Avram, we could start. And if anybody can't hear, we do have mics here, just let us know.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Avram Patt, state representative representing the Lamoille-Washington district, which is Morristown, Elmore, Worcester, and Woodbury, and a part of Stowe, starting with this after the redistricting that happened last year. And I live in Worcester, one of two representatives, and I am serving my fourth term now, and I'm on the Environment and Energy Committee, which is a kind of newly organized. There was some reorganization of the House committees this time around. I previously served on the Energy and Technology Committee, and most of the technology stuff also came to this committee. That's broadband and telecommunications, cell phone service, things like that. And I just did want to say a word about being civil, because what I am struck by all the time in the House and in the State House generally is that unlike some other places, it really is civil. People do disagree with each other sometimes strongly, but people get along, people talk to each other about issues and about everything else, and I really treasure what we have there, especially by contrast of what happens in some other places. It really is, I guess civil is one word. It's friendly, and there is a real effort to try to find common ground. Not always easy, but we all try. Thank you.
Thank you, Pat. Thank you, Avram. My name's Jed Lipsky. I represent Lamoille-Washington. That's entirely stowe except for the northern sliver. I'm what's called a freshman, maybe one of the older folks down there, but it's my first term in a logger for over half a century. I serve on what's now called the Agriculture, Food Resiliency, and Forestry Committee, and that was an appropriate appointment by the speaker. I'm what's called an independent. I'm one of 3 independents down in the General Assembly, which quite frankly is very liberating. I don't have a party boss. I don't have anyone but Vermonters as a whole, and folks who live in my district in Stowe to look after and try to do no harm. I've been a strong advocate for a lot of land use issues. My first government position, I was 21 down in Winhall, Vermont. I was a zoning administrative officer and first chairman of the planning board, and served on numerous municipal boards my whole life. So it's a big honor, and I will underscore what Avram said. It is a very respectful group. How have I spent the first 2 months listening? And I'm talking about tsunami waves through committee of very strong advocates and knowledgeable folks testifying for our committee, and all of them, from their perspective, advocating for the good of Vermonters. And it's a huge honor to be part of that dialogue and challenge. So we value being in front of constituents like this, and the constituent services, from my perspective, have been the most rewarding, because when they come to me or anyone at this table, they're generally hurting and need help. And in our humble way, we try to direct them in the direction or to someone help with that problem. So I'm going to pass this off to Senator Westman, who's also, everyone at this table, for me, have been mentors. The party doesn't assign a mentor, but I've really enjoyed the respectful support that goes on down there. Senator.
So I'm Rich Westman, and yes, it is my birthday, and don't wish me happy birthday. My district is I represent the Lamoille district. The district itself is the county plus Fletcher without Stowe. But quite frankly, no one in Stowe seems to know that. Still emails me, including yesterday's email asking me to fix the problem with the post offices. And I'm like, oh well, I'm some federal politician now. So we really are in the town meeting really represents the midway point in the legislative session. A lot of the stuff happens in committee up to this point, and the reason that I would say that we're in the middle of the session is the budget adjustment, which is the midterm adjustments to our spending, just passed and just got sent to the governor. And number of issues around that which will play into the way the overall budget is constructed were in that, including a bunch of stuff around homeless and different issues like that. And I'm just going to give you guys an aside. I just wrote an article and put it in the Front Porch Forum on homeless. I got nearly 50 emails since yesterday. And when I look at my staff in the mirror in the morning, you need to be fired because you can't get back to everybody. And I'm just telling you, the crush of this job now, with communication is unreal. I don't know how to get back to 50 people and explain even just the homeless problem to them in in a way that is thoughtful, because these are hard issues. And we, whether people like to think so or not, deal with a lot of the hardest issues in our society, and they all aren't easy. And they're all difficult, and just the issue of homelessness. How did we get here? What did we do? And lots of people end up in homeless for a myriad of different reasons, including addiction, mental health, your house burns, however that is. But these are not easy questions, and we deal with a lot of really hard issues that a lot of you will talk about today. And I rambled enough. Bye.
Good morning, I'm Dan Noyes. I represent Wolcott, Hyde Park, Johnson, and Belvedere. Serve on the Human Services Committee. Just a quick update on it's a 2-seat district. Representative Donnelly resigned about a month ago, and there were 3 names that were given to the governor, and we're still waiting for him to make a decision. It's between Randy Pratt and Melanie Carpenter from Hyde Park. So I haven't heard yet. I'm sure it will be soon. It's not an easy decision, I'm sure, to pick someone to fill out the rest of her term. So just kind of an update for people who were wondering what's going on. I get that question quite a bit. As Senator Westman said, we do deal with some pretty complicated issues, and a bill right now that I'm working on in my committee in Human Services is Adult Protective Services, how we deal with individuals who exploit a vulnerable adult. And the reason this is coming up is because for years, individuals, older Vermonters who needed care typically were in institutions, nursing homes, or residential care facilities. A lot of that's changing with choices for care, and people are receiving in-home care. And our laws were written around institutions. And so it's been like 20 years or something since we've updated Adult Protective Services law. So we've been spending a lot of time on this bill. Definitions are critical as to how this bill moves forward. And it's like 65 pages. So it's pretty complicated, as we were talking about. And then just want to talk about, as Avram was saying, we all work together down there. It is pretty unique in our committee, in the Human Services Committee. We generally vote a lot of the bills out unanimously. And we've really listened to all sides of the issues and try to come to an agreement in the committee process, and working with everybody, try to work together to solve some of these issues, especially around human services where it can get pretty complicated. Last thing, I just wanted to let people know that a bill that I've been working on for a number of years, the Office of the Child Advocate, the governor appointed Matthew Bernstein to that position a couple weeks ago. So really excited to see this individual starting to serve as Vermont's first child advocate. And basically what they will do is work with youth in the custody of the state and really try to help figure out strategies and any changes in law where we can help people be successful in transitioning to adulthood out of our child welfare and justice-involved youth system. So pretty excited that the governor has decided on Matthew. He's a really good candidate. I was involved with the interview process, and we had 22 applications for the position, and there was a lot of good names. So, all right, thanks.
Good morning, Representative Mark Higley from Lowell. I'm currently serving a 2-seat district now with Mike Marcotte. So I added 3 towns to my district. My Lamoille County town is Eden, and then I represent Lowell, Jay, Westfield, Troy, Irisburg, Coventry, and Newportown. Just to quickly give you, this is a basic bottom line rundown. This is kind of a list. But I went through to 6 of my towns, 6 of the 8 towns, to their town meetings. So this is a high level look, but I serve on government operations and military affairs. A few items that we're dealing with in there are cannabis control board changes. There were a lot of changes. It's only been 6 months since they're off and running, but they want a lot of changes. We passed out a sports betting bill, elections bill, We've got sheriff's issues, looking at some uniform accounting for that system. Big ticket items, S5, the Affordable Heat Act, paid family leave, childcare, free school lunches, ed property taxes. And I guess, the thing that I would like to say is, in running to 6 of my town meetings, 6 of my 8 town meetings, those folks are under it. You may have heard a report that across the state, the average increase in budgets for towns is around 8%. And of course, Morrisville's is 3 times that. People in Montpelier need to understand what at least my rural communities are going through with meeting those budget requirements. And a lot of it, as I'm sure Morrisville is finding out, I heard this morning, they're going to go through it, but same with every town. There's things that they have to do. There's issues with whether it's the Halloween flood that we had to replace one bridge right off and another bridge that's coming down the pipe. This is thousands and thousands of dollars that above and beyond what the state legislature does to us. And that's what I think I certainly will go back to Montpelier with. Again, it's a little late when it comes to the floor, but try to explain to people, listen, what we do down here is detrimental to my community to live and thrive in the rural community. So again, that's what I took away from, yet again, one of my obligations to go around to my town meetings and listen to folks. They just don't understand what we're doing down there, and I can certainly understand that. But again, appreciate being here, and looking forward to answering any questions. I have to leave early as well. I have another meeting in Morrisville, so I'll have to leave about 9:15. I appreciate being here. Thank you.
Great, thanks. Before we get too deep in here, by a quick show of hands, I know some folks kind of came with a question in their pocket. Would you mind letting me know how many of you have done so? Okay, there's a fair amount. So I'm going to go ahead and go to you first. Does anybody want to? Looks like we have we'll get just a second, I guess. Perfect, thanks. Go ahead.
Thank you, Pat, very much. Thank you, legislators, for attending these breakfasts. They're really valuable. I got a lot of my questions answered this morning already, but I want to reiterate so everybody's aware. I don't think the problem is quite as acute in other towns as it is in Stowe, but this is a post office issue. We are not getting deliveries. We are not getting deliveries. We understand there is a room with hundreds of packages that need to be sorted before they can be delivered, and they can't find good workers. So it's a federal problem. There's not an easy local solution, but I ask that everybody be aware whether you have these problems or not, because one community in Lamoille County is suffering. And by the way, Senator Westman, I live in Stowe, and I didn't realize you were not my representative. Thank you.
Did we ever
Do you want a response
Yeah,
to
go ahead. Sure.
one of my constituents, Jeff Lindemer? Jed Lipsky again from Stowe, and this maybe hasn't affected Lamoille County towns as acutely as it has in Stowe, but during the last week, I was on the phone and communicating with Congresswoman Becca Balint's office, Senator Bernie Sanders' office, looking for federal help. It's a USPA, it's a U.S. Department, it's not a state. I spoke with Governor Scott's, one of his administrators, asking if as Mr. Lindemer said, there's this rumored garage door building at the Stowe post office that has over 3,000 undelivered packages, some of which go back 7 weeks. Could we get the National Guard down here to distribute? No. Went to the town manager, went to the select board. So we're aware of it. We red flagged the Stowe as a dysfunctional postal facility, and frankly not due to the folks that work there. They're understaffed, they get wage of packages, and it's not that they don't want to do their job. They've had folks out on medical leave, and we're working on it.
I just say, the congressional delegation, the two staff from the two senators and the Representative Balance office came around to all the committees in the legislature, and I think they heard about the post office issue in almost every committee that they went to. And I would assure the people in Stowe, they're not the only one that is having trouble getting their mail delivered. We're all having it, and it really comes down to, I think, and this is the issue of our time, and it affects everything that we're doing. And I talked about it in the 5 town meetings that I attended this year. People can't get staff. And whether it's the US Post Office, whether it's, as we talk about expanding child care, as we talk about getting carpentry jobs done, as we talk about the clean heat standards that we're trying to, talking about putting in place, and changing from the existing, people's existing furnaces to that. The question that underlines all of that is, where are we going to get the people to do the work to meet the timelines that we want? And that's the issue in the post office. You can't go to a single post office in this county and not see a sign of wanted. And so, and it really is the issue of our time and how we staff things and how we look at things.
Thanks. Do we have another question?
Yeah, Joe Wooden, new to the state. I've only been here 40 years. I've worked at Copley. I've worked at 4 hospitals in Vermont. But the question I have just is, been through some terrific times with COVID, and in that process, a lot of stimulus money just helped a lot of people, which is great. I think some of the concern is what's going to happen in the future when we have to pay that back. So last week we had this Silicon Valley Bank, California, which sounds like nobody cares, it's California. What do we care about California? But a lot of people say that's a canary in the coal mine, and there's other banks that are going to fall because of the same portfolio investments. And so I'm just concerned, having all of us spend so much money, how do we make sure that a year or 2 or years from now, we're able to take care of the vulnerable population by not spending so much now and then realizing, oh my gosh, we didn't budget or plan well, and we're gonna fall off the cliff, and then a lot of people are gonna be really hurting. I mean, there's a lot of people hurting now. I appreciate Senator Westman, your comment about the homeless, but if you play that film forward, we're really gonna have problems in a couple of years, like pretty soon. It might happen within this next year based upon that bank. So I'm just asking about the budgeting process and how we make sure we have money for bridges, we have money for homeless, because we've been enjoying a lot of relief, but it's gonna end. And I think some of the business community is gonna fall apart. Thanks very much.
Do you want to go first?
Sure, I'll try. Thanks, Joe, for your question. Appreciate it. You know, and I agree that we're going to have to really think about future savings in order to deal with shortfalls that we're inevitably having. But we also have, just in home and community-based providers who provide in-home care and residential care facilities for older Vermonters, they just did a rate study, and there's $31 million deficit right there, right now, in order to have a workforce that can provide these services to people who need them. So, you know, how do we figure out that, you know, what investments do we absolutely have to make now, and how can we try to prepare for the future? It's not an easy discussion to have, but yeah, thank you for pointing it out.
So it's an issue I think about every night, because when we start every year in the legislature, one of the first things that happens is the economists come together, legislative economists and the gubernatorial economists come together to set the revenue estimates. And there's always something. So Tom Corvette's report this year, they do it twice a year, in July and in January. And in Tom Corvette's report this year, on page 4, there's a picture of Wile E. Coyote running out over the cliff. And he's in the air, and he looks down, and it's that oh my moment. Here's where we are. We're about 1/3 of the way through spending all of the ARPA money and the infrastructure money from the feds. That will all be gone within 2 years. And we're running through that money now. During COVID, we paid through federal programs the rents for a lot of renters in our society. And during COVID, what we saw was those people that are on the bottom 50% of the economic ladder in Vermont and across the country, their net worth went from $33,000 in 2019 to over $70,000 just after the pandemic. And now because of inflation, that the people that are on the bottom half of the economic ladder in places like Vermont are now running through that money that they put away. And they're going to run out of money about the same time that we run out of all of the stimulus money and the infrastructure money from the feds. What that will do to our economy is there's going to be a contraction. And the contraction is going to be out in about 2 years. And one of the things that we need to think about is the income tax, which funds a lot of the general fund programs that we got, is the most volatile. It goes up 20%, it drops 20% like a rock. What that means is a couple $100 million swings in everything we do. So I think it's very appropriate, because everybody is all over the legislature right now well, you've got all this money. We need some money for our programs right now. But the real question is, when the economy goes south and the number of people that need programs jumps when the economy is bad, how are we going to take care of our most vulnerable when the economy goes bad and where we are? And yes, we have some reserves, but we keep a 5% reserve at the bottom line in the general fund. It will be gone like dew before the sun. And when you look at somebody old like me now, I've seen this up and down, up and down, up and down. We have just had this argument in the budget adjustment, and then I'll shut up. The governor left in the budget adjustment someplace between 350 and 370 million on the bottom line. The House spent that down to 290 million. The Senate came back and we left about 320 to 325 on the bottom line. Everybody that I hear wants us to spend all of that in next year's budget. And if we do that, we put ourselves that we have nothing put away for when the bad times come. When we have the most people that are the most vulnerable that will need programs. So I just raised that to put you in a position. And I didn't set him up for this either. So, but it's what I think about all the time.
If I may, Pat, in the agriculture, and we have a new title, food resiliency, there's been a lot of focus on universal school meals. Even though Stowe is considered an affluent community, we represent all of Vermont, and there's high rates of folks in need of school meal support, and our committee has advocated for funding of universal school meals. That means breakfast and lunch for school-aged children, those who at least can focus on learning and benefit from a nutritious meal. Another, this is relevant to Lamoille County, which from 2009 to 2019 lost 39% of their farms, went out of business, sold their herds. Now from 2019 to present, there's probably been another 8 or 9% of farms that have gone out of business. Joe, you're correct. There's a lot of changes ahead. And one initiative we're working on is farms to school for raising produce, meat, even Boyden Farm ground beef. It's not a big part of nutritionist programs, but getting local produce. It isn't traveling from the San Joaquin Valley, California. It's coming from Lamoille County schools, Vermont farms and Vermont schools. And this has been a big initiative. If that's helpful to hunger and breaking a challenge of supply chains, then it's a positive step. Housing, homeless do not have housing, but there are many of these collective workforce issues that, as everyone has noted, is a big challenge to all businesses and all workers who want to take some of these jobs that are available. I think in the legislature, the governor and all of our committees have been very supportive of rural housing initiatives, conversion of existing some distressed properties into multifamily housing. Big issue, and hard times are coming. Some of us, even those of us older than Richie, have ridden many waves of recession, and prosperity hasn't necessarily flowed down with the logging world, but we've seen ups and downs, and it's coming, that's for sure. So,
Thanks, Jen. Brett, did you have more?
Yeah, if I could, want to just add to what you said, Joe. I just got a call this weekend from a family who was looking to take their mother in to care for her. And it was through a group called Pride Incorporated that deals with Dale. And it was federal money out there again for this, for them to be actually paid for after they brought their house up to standards to take care of their mother. Now they're not going to be allowed to do that because the money is running out. Again, I actually talked to Pride Incorporated. They relayed a lot of it to initially the requirements through Dale for you to provide care in your home for an elderly individual or somebody with disabilities. The standards are the same as nursing homes, which is unbelievable to me. And you may know too that the Newport homes recently closed too. And so where are these folks going to go if they're not being allowed reasonably to stay in a family's home, and these nursing homes we've got a real issue. Again, going on to budget items, I have a little different take on it, always have. This has been out there for a number of years about free school lunch program for everybody. It's around $29 million. It was paid for by the feds during the pandemic. To me, this is a hit on all the individuals that pay property taxes now. There is free and reduced lunch already, so the people that can afford it now are going to have a free ride. And I think that's just one more thing to add to the list. I mean, I looked at the education property tax rate from what I can see. Things might have changed a little, but it appears that there was a $64 million surplus. If we use that surplus somewhere else, it could be as much as an 8.3% education property tax increase. And if we don't, it's still going to be about a 3.7%. So, we talk a good talk a lot of times, but we have to take some hard stands now and then. We've all got our pet projects and ideas and all that sort of stuff, but to me, I don't see it down in Montpelier where, you know, we want paid family leave. I mean, the best in the country for, you know, the governor's already launched a voluntary program. The program that the majority is putting forward down there is 12 weeks of paid leave at 100% of wage replacement. I guess there's been a little bit of change on that as well. You know, the child care issue, you know, I don't know why the Rand study came up with $175 million to $275 million increase. That's kind of a broad range. But, you know, the list goes on, and we have to take some harder stands if we are gonna weather this storm, if you ask me. But I don't see it happening in Montpelier. Sorry.
Thanks. We have another question.
Well, thank you. And thank you for all your work. As Mark mentioned, retail cannabis, there's some moves to relax some of the safeguards there by the Cannabis Control Commission. And Rich, thank you for your email. I feel honored to have received an email from you this weekend.
I try to get back to you.
No, thank you. I definitely appreciate that, you know, that. But I guess the question is really around why the rush? Why the need to move some of these rollbacks of safeguards right away? We know that Vermont is #1 for youth cannabis use in the country, also for youth alcohol use. We know that Lamoille County is often higher than our state averages in that regard for youth use. And we also know that Lamoille County is the highest for adult use, so that means there's already a lot of product in homes. So things like, you know, increasing the potency, so removing the potency cap, potentially are going to impact our youth more than potentially other youth around the state because these products are in the home. So I guess the question is, what can we do to slow down that process, to wait for data to actually come back? You know, retail just opened in October. You know, we have, you know, it takes time to see the impacts. And so how can we kind of take a pause and see how this is going to impact our youth? Thank you.
So, again, that was in my committee. It's interesting that the piece that came through was a bill from the Cannabis Control Board. They called it a technical corrections bill. And there was nothing more technical corrections about it than anything. I mean, they had provisions where they cut the fees in half for licenses from you know, $20,000 to $10,000. There was edible limits that they wanted to change as far as packaging. There was a propagation license that they wanted down because you may have heard that Holland had an issue with tainted cannabis, and they feel that that might have come from the illicit market. They want to have a propagation license now where it starts right from seed and flower to a regulated group of folks. I believe in the Senate side, they're the ones that are looking at the increase above the 60% THC content. We haven't seen that in a committee. We have talked about it. We've had the Vermont Medical Society come in and explain all the concerns. I've actually been involved with Jennifer Bickford, who's reached out to me with a lot of her concerns as well. And yeah, it's only been out there 6 months. Let's slow it down. Let's see how it continues. We have the growers in there as well, and they're asking for some unbelievable demands as well. There's a big push, there's a big industry, a lot of money out there, and they want it opened up for advertising more, THC limit increases, you name it. They're saying that they're being burdened by all the regulations that were put into effect. And again, it's only been 6 months, so personally, I think let's see how it works. Thank you.
More from the group on that one? Okay, great. Maybe we can get that mic over to this side of the room.
I'm Susie Connerty. I'm from Stowe. I want to revisit the food issue. I want to encourage you to support Salvation Farms. Salvation Farms made a presentation on March 1st about their one-time need to upgrade their work. And what Salvation Farms does is they take food that is not saleable on the commercial market, perfectly nutritious, perfectly good, and provide the food to different outlets, schools, and Meals on Wheels, and many different areas. And all the work is done by volunteers. I'm one of them. And it's gleaning. It's an ancient way of providing for the needy. And it's in the Bible. In the old days, that's how Ruth and Boaz got together, because Ruth was gleaning. In other words, taking the food that was left for them to collect, to use. So Salvation Farms is the modern day version of that, and they need money to expand their services. And I see this as a really good fit for children and adults and families that need nutritional support.
Pat, may I respond to Ms. Converty?
I have one more thing after this. Yeah.
With regard to Salvation Farms, they have came and testified. Teresa Snow, who's the director in our food resiliency facet of our committee, their request was approved unanimously and passed on to appropriations and ways and means. So they got full support from the Ag, Food Resiliency, and Forestry, and we were quite impressed. By the way, we are in Johnson. Salvation Farms is based in Morrisville, but they do glean produce from all over the state of Vermont, including Bennington County. And they are major suppliers of fresh and nutritious vegetable products, produce products to the prison systems and other institutions. And they're hoping to improve their packaging so they can actually distribute to public schools as well. Thank you.
So the second thing I wanted to talk
If
about.
I could finish, they also came, Teresa also came before the Senate Agriculture Committee, where, since we're on two committees, so there's 5 members on the Senate Ag, 2 of us are on appropriations too. They are asking for $550,000. What they're really trying to do here in Johnson is create almost a mimic of what's in Harvard in the Food Venture System Center, to be able to package food and do that. And think about it this way: if it's perfectly nutritious but not pretty, it goes through the gleaning for that. But I'd also like to say something about food in general. And we've covered a bunch of the other pieces. At the end of this month, the federal government will cut basically 3 squares of the food assistance program that they've got in a dramatic cut. They will cut basically $78 million in food security and through 3 squares, away from those people below 185% of poverty. So if you're a single parent with kids and you're low income, on average it's someplace between $100 and $180 a month that you have less for food. And that's coming at the same time that we're talking about expanding school lunches, which is in that piece. At the same time that the food shelf is asking us for a minimum of $3 million, because all of the food shelves across the state are now being overrun with people that are panicked because those people that are at risk are going out. This is not just an individual issue. When it comes to this, I think we have to stand back and say, where are the most important things for us to put our resources to protect our most vulnerable first? And I think that's important. But Salvation Farms is asking for is one-time money to set up a venture center here, which is a lot different than ongoing helping people every day. But the food issue is a complicated issue also.
I just want to add, just so people know, when I heard you mention Salvation Farms, I served on the board of Salvation Farms for 6 years, the last 5 of that as chair of the board. It's been a couple of years since I've been off the board, but I keep in touch, and I'm very, very familiar with what Salvation Farms does, both in terms of what they have done and do in this area, as well as how they have inspired groups around the state of Vermont to do similar kinds of gleaning projects, but also in terms of their desire and efforts to do some processing of the food that gets collected and gleaned, so that it can be preserved, frozen, minimal processing, and distributed over time to those who need it. So I just want to let people know that I was very glad to hear that the House Committee supported their request.
Hey, was there a quickly, can we get through the second half of that question?
There's a second question.
Second question, let's go.
The second question is S37, an act relating to access to legally protected healthcare activity and regulation of healthcare providers. I would like to know the motivation behind this bill.
Anybody here familiar with that bill?
It's a Senate bill.
Yeah, no sponsors of that here, I don't believe today.
Okay. Well, can I just say that it puts tremendous pressure on another very critical charity, and that is the Pregnancy Resource Centers. And so when you do look at that, Pregnancy Resource Centers are places where people can go when they want help supporting their pregnancies. They're uncommon. There's only 7 in the state. And if we are supporting abortion, then we certainly need to support people who choose to carry their babies full term. And they certainly need a lot of support. These Pregnancy Resource Centers are exactly that. They provide resources in all the different dimensions that a young family would need support from. So when you look at H37, please think about the motivation and make sure it's fair, because as it's written now, it doesn't look so, but I don't know the motivation behind it.
Thanks. Looks like we've got a couple more questions here, and then one more in the back.
Thank you. Thank you all for being here. I really appreciate your time. My name is Jonathan Wood. I live in Cambridge. I'm a forester. I work with private forest landowners throughout Lamoille County in northern Vermont. And I appreciate the emphasis on affordability in our upcoming financial crunch. It's going to put tremendous pressure on a lot of the rural resources that we have in the state, people that work in those resources, be it both agriculture and forestry, which is a real huge part of northern Vermont outside of Chittenden County. So thank you for that awareness, and I hope you're able to control spending and think of the future. What I do when I do my work is think of the future in 100-year increments. So we're trying to look forward in forestry into the future, and the finance is very important. We look at all the things, water, soil, wildlife, climate, and the biggest thing we're faced with is socio-economic infrastructure for humans and their impacts on how our land develops or doesn't. So it's very important for us to look at those things. I urge you to keep looking at. I wanted to also focus on Representative Patt's comments earlier about what a wonderful area the State House is as far as collegiality, and that's true. I worked there for a while, and it is. But there's a phenomenon going on now, and I'll point out to a bill, 30 by 30 Biodiversity Protection Act that just was passed out of your committee. with one of the most lopsided testimony processes over 3 years I've ever seen. Extremely frustrating for natural resource professionals not to be able to come in and testify. It was all one-sided, very little representation from the industry, from the state agencies, extremely poorly done, and extremely frustrating for many of us to see that bill with hand-picked testifiers in favor of it, and no real concept of the reality and the hit that's going to take. The two people that were allowed to testify on behalf of forestry both said that the bill was poorly done, would have a tremendously negative impact on people. The agency testified this will set back our conservation goals. It still passed right out, and I'm sure it'll pass. Last year, the governor vetoed it. I don't think he'll have the ability to do that. And the bottom line is, funny enough, it will set back conservation of forest land. It will set back and impact our rural resources in Lamoille County and beyond. And that just seems lost on the folks pushing it forward. Primarily your committee chair, Representative Patt. One-sided, one lopsided. My other question is, process-wise, why didn't that go to the Committee on Forest, Agriculture and Forestry? Just shows me that collegiality doesn't extend to the leadership very much, because that was specifically orchestrated not to go to that committee. Very cursory input. Just my concerns. I don't really have the power to do much else anymore, so I'm really concerned about how that ties into the socioeconomic issues that are going to arise over the next 3 to 5 years in this county. It's not looking good. Thank you for your
Can I
time.
respond to that, please?
Yeah, sure.
You know, I'm glad someone in the room understands and cares about 30 by 30. As I said, when I opened, I'm the freshman member of one of many freshman members, but it struck me as completely inappropriate why this 30 by 30 bill did not have a place in the Agriculture and Forestry Committee. And not having a party to answer to, I went to the Speaker of the House 3 weeks ago, and I wanted to know why this bill that I've been following didn't begin in our committee. We're the only room in the building that has forestry on the door. We're 74% forested in Vermont. The biggest and most effective natural process that we have to sequester greenhouse gases are our forests. They are the most powerful and the cheapest tool, and we can improve on that ability to sequester and store by managing with the carbon goals in mind, on top of the soils and wildlife and recreation and clean water and clean air values. The carbon store, the carbon pool, is another very important factor in reducing our greenhouse gases. So to that point, the speaker said, you know, Representative Lipsky, you know, I can't, it's peculiar, I'm not sure why. But I said, I'm not arguing about jurisdiction. That horse left the barn a year ago. But I would like to see that bill come before a committee. It did on what down in the legislature is called a drive-by. Now, that drive-by was about an hour of testimony, and it never was in our hands. So there are a lot of folks from the forest products industry, the landowners. There are only 17,000 landowners in Vermont that have the parcels in current use, active forestry. It's amazing that they were not represented during that testimony. So there are people aware, and I'm not the leader, but I am a leader in that field that is advocating for a fair representation. My final point, Pat, is there's an initiative that was passed in 2022 before I had a chair down there. It's called the Vermont Forest Futures Initiative. And it gave 2 years to come up with a plan, a 10-year plan, and how to manage not underwrite, but make decisions that met all the forest value needs as well as supportive of forest products industry. I was logging when Bell Gates was an hour. I used to bring logs in there, Underhill, down to Villeneuve, to Manchester Lumber, the Howard Menage. I've watched this industry have an attrition rate of 97% since when I started logging 50 some years ago. I've observed this. I log. When I'm not in the legislature, I work every day, and I'll work because that's what loggers do anyway. So we're aware of it. It is an issue. I think a lot of Avram and my other colleagues, but that was a peculiar move, I have to say.
We go in the back and then. Good morning. I'm Eric Bailey, the village manager for Johnson, which also makes me the general manager of Johnson Water and Lake Department. I've got grave concerns for the ironically named Affordable Heat Act. And there's two main reasons for that. One is yet another regressive program that hits lower income Vermonters the hardest. Yes, we've got the foundation most vulnerable tied to it, but that double income family that has just enough money to not be on those programs, but not enough to not be struggling, gets targeted by all these programs. They're the ones that take it the hardest. The second problem is one that you may not be aware of. The electrical supply, due to the renewable energy standard, is less and less reliable. All the utilities in Vermont were put on a warning this winter that if we had a cold snap in Connecticut and the Boston area, we would have to do rolling blackouts due to lack of supply. The fuel was going to go to heat those homes, and we would be dealing with having to shut people off for 4 hours at a time. Yet now we want to try to force more and more on that grid that is having a hard time sustaining what we're doing right now. So those are my two concerns. I want to speak to the Affordable Heat Act. I know we talked about it last month a little bit.
I'm not afraid to stay away from it. I think we all want clean energy and a cleaner world, but I feel that bill is probably more flawed than the 30 by 30. And I'm not convinced that it will get overridden because of some of the complex issues you brought up, like where's the generation of electricity going to come from, where's the distribution, and nobody's talking about the ecological and environmental impacts of mining lithium and all the coppers that all these other countries out of Russia and all over Africa, and believe me, I've been all over Africa on different missions. There are ecological, environmental impacts from the other side of that coin. So that debate isn't over, and it's not, it may not be easy, but we'll see.
So I'm the only one that voted on that issue. First off, it's very unclear what the bill will do to low income. Basically, what you do is you put fees and charges on a carbon product, you turn that over, and that money will go to those people that are below 60% of the gross household income of a community. But the problem is, for me, it gets back to that labor. We're rushing to get to 2030 to meet our climate change goals, which we all want to meet those goals. But we have so few people that are plumbers, electricians, and people doing the work. We can't make a shift and get there and do the work we need to to be able to meet those goals as it is. Right now, we've got ARPA money going to a lot of the community action agencies to do weatherization. And we are going to be lucky to get the money out the door because we don't have enough people doing the work. That concern about that work is important to me. What I do think was good that we were able to, at the last minute, get in the Senate, which I hope the House will keep, is that bill instructs the PUC to come up with the plan and the overall rules and structure of how we get there. And until they write those rules, I can't really tell you who's going to be hurt at what level by this bill. The way the bill had passed the Natural Resources Committee in the Senate, there was no look back to bring the issue back to the legislature. The amendment that we got added in the Appropriations Committee at the last was that they have to come back, they have to price out everything that they do. They have to, through different studies, tell us what the labor force is to get there, what timelines they think it can get there from the PUC. And the PUC are thoughtful people, and they will be instructed in 2025 to come back and do that. I think that if that leaves the bill, I think it would be terrible if they took that out in the House. I think that's an extremely important piece of this, is to have whatever they do come back to the legislature in bill form and go through the process the way a normal bill would be.
Just want to point out that there's 526 older Vermonters in Lamoille County who receive LIHEAP, the Low Income Heating Assistance Program, and I'd be interested to see how we're going to make sure that they are able to heat their homes if we're transitioning away. And I'll be looking for the same thing, to have the PUC come back with what's the plan for individuals on LIHEAP.
So I certainly don't support it. Haven't. Senator Westman talked about goals. We no longer have goals. They're benchmarks, and that's the concern. I introduced H74, a repeal of the Global Warming Solutions Act. So much of this is coming down from the Climate Council in regards to that. We have our comprehensive energy plan that's been out there since 1985, updated every 6 years, that set goals. We can fall back on that, but initially they wanted TCI, Transportation Climate Initiative, that was a gas tax, diesel tax. That fell through because of the Greenland states not joining on. The other thing that they got through, the agency of resources, is the California Clean Car Standards. No new internal combustion engine vehicles sold in the state of Vermont by 2035. These sorts of things are, in my estimation, pie in the sky stuff that will hurt Vermont. We're going to get there. We're going to get there at a pace that Vermonters can afford. And to me, whether it's TCI, whether it's the Affordable Heat Act or Clean Heat Standard, whatever you want to call it, these are issues that, as Richie said, sure, okay, so the PUC is going to come up. Can you imagine putting a bill out there where you don't know what the program is going to cost or how it's going to work, and you're going to vote on it? I mean, that's just craziness. And to me, so what if it comes back in 2 years? They're going to vote on it anyway, regardless of what that proposal is, if you ask me. So that's a concern. It's a concern that people have reached out there. I mean, the Sergeant at Arms office down there was inundated with calls from Vermonters. The Fuel Dealers Association was down there on the day of the vote. I've gotten certainly probably some of the most emails in regards to this issue. And to me, the legislature isn't listening to the people. And I apologize, but I do have to leave.
Yeah, thanks for coming.
I'll just, as someone who was on the House committee that the Senate bill will probably come to, and also was on the committee in the last session that dealt with the bill, somewhat similar bill that was vetoed. I do want to say a couple of things. First of all, in terms of the question about whether the grid in Vermont is capable of sustaining the increased use of electricity, the warnings that went out about possible shutoffs were for other parts of New England, but the grid in Vermont, and I worked in the utility business for many, many years, the grid in Vermont was not of that kind of concern, both at the local distribution level as well as Velco, the Vermont transmission company that the utilities in Vermont own. That was not considered an issue in terms of whether that would be an issue in Vermont. So I just want people to understand that. From my perspective, the bill with the look back that Senator Westman was talking about that the Senate added, the bill would deal with the second largest source of Vermont's greenhouse gases, both as a state and on a per capita average basis, and that is heating, thermal uses of energy. And I do believe that the way it's structured will help people both use less energy as well as move to other sources of energy that are stably and much more predictably priced than fossil fuels. I think we know, those of us that use fossil fuels, I think we know what happens to fossil fuel prices, that prices can double, can go up by $1 or $2 a gallon. Nothing like that is contemplated as an impact out of this bill. So if we do the look back, I think that will be answered. But when we dealt with the previous bill, we did in fact have cost benefit analysis done, and we have other states to look at where the effect on the consumer price of fuel is very, very modest compared to the benefit that people will get from using a cheaper and more stably priced fuel as well as using less energy.
Okay, thanks. We're getting pretty late on time here. You're gonna be the last one. I just wanted to point out once again, there's a lot of pastries left, so feel free to bring some with you when you leave for your college, your family, what have you. And we're gonna right here, Lisa. Right here. Yeah.
Okay, sorry.
I've been giving a look to her a couple times.
Thank you. I'm Beth Walsh, and I work up at the college. I'm also the president of the Vermont State Colleges United Professional Staff Union. And I'm sorry that our president had to leave early because I think he would have appreciated hearing us talk about the importance of Johnson, Northern Vermont University Johnson, to these communities all in the world. And I look around this room and I know that there are lots of graduates or people that work there or people that are graduates, because it's not just the post office that's looking for employees, it's also human services, it's also nursing, the hospitals, it's plumbers and different majors that we have at the technical college. And we are all greatly suffering because of the decades of underfunding from the state of Vermont. One of the lowest, we were fighting with New Hampshire as to who got the less money for public higher education. We're still down there, even with the increased funding we've done. And the fact that our increased funding right now is trying to, we're going through this huge transformation, unifying Castleton and Johnson and Linden and VTC into the Vermont State University. It costs a lot of money, but instead we're asked to cut $5 million a year for 5 years in order to get the increased funding. I don't know if we can do it. It's appalling to me, the changes, the cuts that are gonna have to happen to make that happen, because every time when Jeff Spalding threatened to close 3 of our campuses, our enrollment dropped. And now the whole change with the library going digital and with the changes in athletics, our enrollment's going to drop. It's starting now and it's going to drop. We talk about not having enough people in the state to do the work that we have, and we are going to lose a lot of out-of-state students because of our changes. They're happening now, and next year, what are the changes? I don't know. But I'm very concerned for this community and for our students to have affordable higher education where they can come. Many of our students work, they have to be near home, they have families, and they won't have a place to go to school to get whatever degree they need to advance their family and their careers if we are not here. I understand that a lot of students do well with digital and remote learning. A lot of students do not. Many of the students that come to the state college system need a little extra help, but then they just take off and they do great things. So I just felt like I needed to talk to you all, and I really appreciate you being here and spending all this time. I'm concerned, and if something doesn't change as far as cutting $5 million off appropriations that aren't enough to begin with, I'm afraid that Johnson's going to lose a very big employer and a good asset to this location.
I wish you could have asked that question when the president was still here. So, first off, and I'm trying to organize a meeting with through the Johnson Select Board with the president and the chancellor to talk about these changes that there are. I think for me, the first thing that we have to talk about is the president himself said that he wants this going forward to be a collaborative process. And I don't really get an idea of what that means and what, the discussions around how are you going to include the students, include the faculty, and include the communities to be, and how are we going to know we've been listened to when that gets incorporated into the process? I think that question really needs to be put to the leadership of the state college system right now. What I would say to you is, yes, we did underfund for a while, but we put nearly $200 million into the state college system over the last 3 years. We've bailed out most of the debt. There's a ton of transformation money. We've increased the base budget by 50%. The state has, at least over the last 3 years, and being on appropriations, I have been right in the front of pushing all of that along. We've done a lot of really good things, and there is some light at the end of this tunnel to be able to get into a place. We can't expect that there's not going to be changes in the way they do that. But I think that communication of how that is, and are you listening to the players involved, and how you're going to incorporate that into what their thinking is. Right now, I'm not sure where all of that is, and I wish the president was here to hear that.
Yeah, I definitely agree. This college is really important to our community, and I went to school there. My daughter went to school there. My wife's going to school there now.
And your friend went there.
And you're my friend, my birthday friend here. I think that it's super important that we come up with a way to make sure that the college is strong and doing well. From what I understand, enrollment was up 1% this year when other universities and colleges are down, 8% or something like that. So we were on the right track, and that now as with this proposal to close the library and the sports, what impact will that have? Can't be good.
Great, everybody, thanks a lot. Thanks everybody for coming. I know we didn't get to everyone today. We have one more breakfast coming up April 3rd at Smugs. So I encourage you, if you didn't get to your questions today, bring them. Grab me early next time, or give me rude looks, I don't know, whatever it takes. So we'll try to get everybody's questions answered next time as best we can. Thanks for coming, I appreciate it.